The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the We Can radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the We Can radio team.
Welcome to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. I'm your host, Kurt Dukaj, co-host Michael McCullough, and Perry Heichu. And behind the camera and on the boards, we have John today, making us sound and look good. So, boy, it's been an interesting week in cannabis. We had some big news come down from the Attorney General, huh?
Oh, okay. Let's get into that one first then.
Straight away.
Yeah. The Nevada Attorney General has ruled that the doctor's notes are not valid from California. And implicit in that, I would say, are doctor's notes from any state are not going to be accepted. And this is going to disenfranchise a lot of people.
Yeah, it's going to affect a lot of patients. I mean, because a big part of our tourist population that comes here is from California.
A disproportionate amount of them.
They're our immediate neighbors, and they like to come to Vegas and have fun. And there's a lot of patients who come out here and need to bring their meds.
And you can't have fun if you're feeling ill, if you're all cramped up, or if you're nauseous or whatever. So it's not just have fun recreational, but we're building this tourist industry in this city on the idea that that everyone can come here and it's a place to blow off steam, and Sin City and most everything goes. But if you're feeling like crap, you're not going to partake in any of that.
Oh yeah, if you're in pain, and who wants to even sit through a show? Could be up to 2 hours long sitting in a chair. Mm-hmm. I know I have problems doing that without my medication.
Or even simple traveler's anxiety from understanding that you can't bring that medicine with you, or if there are repercussions potentially or for bringing it or something like that, it's better just to eliminate that and just let people be who they want to be.
Absolutely. Well, apparently in a letter from the Attorney General Adam Laxalt to the Health Department Director Richard Whitley, he made a recommendation. He said that a recommendation from a California physician and a driver's license from another state cannot be used to obtain medical marijuana from a Nevada dispensary. And that's going to cut out a lot of business.
Up to 50% of the business for some of these shops, I would assume. And beyond that, I feel like this is very seriously interfering with some of the legislative intent that was originally put into that Senate Bill 374 all those years ago now. Yes. That was negotiated. It was hard fought and won negotiated in that session. And for one elected official to...
Well, he's not even elected, actually. Okay, Adam Laxalt. Yeah, but the person who brought this up to him, Richard Whitley, who runs the Division of Health, is an appointee of the governor. Mm-hmm. So in that case, he's a political guy who is not a big fan of this program, and so he's reaching out to see what he can do to slow it down.
Well, I think there's a good chance that they might get away with this. The division hasn't really, been super, I don't want to say friendly, but on the liberal leanings of some of these policies, they'll always err on the conservative side, I've seen. So I would expect them to maybe not immediately jump on this, but I would, of course, give a serious look. Of course, I don't think that this is the law. I don't think just because Mr. Laxalt decides to issue a memorandum that it becomes policy. The division actually has to move and adopt that policy as their own. So I'm not exactly sure when the next meeting is or what can be done to, I don't want to say put the brakes, but kind of tell our side of the story again. Before this comes down, but it's just beating the same old dead horse. I thought we had already won this war, or this battle at least, and here we are rehashing these old issues once again.
And I think you're right that the division is pretty much going to do what it wants here, because when you're talking about out-of-state residents who are just coming here for a short period of time, their voices are not going to be heard in these hearings.
Right.
They're not local, they're not constituents, and so they will be largely disregarded. I think the only people who can make a big stink about it will be the dispensary owners and the workers who are going to say, look, if you carry through with this, we're going to lose our jobs. And maybe there's an in there, but largely, yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and what the law says is that you have to have a state-issued card or the equivalent of a state-issued card. So what's next on the horizon? Are they going to say that letter you get that's good for 60 days before you get your card? Are we going to stop taking that from Nevadans? I mean, because that's not a state-issued card.
Didn't they already try that once?
They did. And they just fixed it this year.
I mean, so all this fighting over this, it's just really kind of stupid. I mean, a patient is a patient, regardless of what form they have. They should be able to. I mean, out-of-state patients should be able to have just a doctor's recommendation, or if they don't want to take out-of-state doctor's recommendations, why don't they allow them to see a doctor here and get a doctor's recommendation here and buy with the Nevada doctor's recommendation? You know, I mean, that would be the equivalent. I mean, obviously we can't force them to get a Nevada card because, one, they can't because they're not a Nevada resident.
Right.
Two, by the time they get the card, they'll already most likely be home because it's taking about 9 to 14 days to get your card. So, but
I think the counter to that is that, you know, if you have a patient who is coming from elsewhere, we can't assume that just because they're coming to Vegas that they're wealthy and they have a lot of disposable income. A lot of people with personal health issues have financial issues as well, because it costs. It's expensive to be sick, and to force these people to then go to the greater expense of coming to Vegas and taking time out of their holiday to go to a doctor and then to go to a state office, even the one on Sahara that issues on the same day, is just unduly burdensome. And not only is it burdensome, but I think that in the spirit of this violates the equal protection amendment in the Constitution. I can't think of another single legal medicine that they enforce this with. If you have an out-of-state prescription for your Vicodin or your Lortab or your insulin or you know, your heart medication, anything like that, those are all controlled substances. Yet the state does not get involved in this, and the state's perfectly fine with out-of-state doctors making these recommendations. You know, we are still seeing a government, by and large, in the throes of that reefer madness mentality.
Same issues we've been dealing with for decades. It's just round. It just seems like round and round we go. You know, the old whack-a-mole. When we knock one issue down, another one pops up to deal with. Unfortunately, I mean, there seems to really be kind of no end to it. I'm not exactly sure what can be done to permanently. I mean, I thought this was in the state constitution, to tell you the truth, and everything was kind of locked up. I wasn't aware that this was even able to be changed without legislative official action. I wasn't aware that the division had the authority to just up and decide to do this on the behest of somebody, but this seems quite serious.
Well, the division is part of the executive branch, which is a co-equal branch with the legislature and the judiciary in our system of checks and balances. And so there's a lot that they can do. Now, you know, obviously, I'm a progressive, and I speak in that direction a lot, and you know, I'm not hitting on the Republican Party or anything like that. But here in the state of Nevada, since at least the turn of the century, we have had Republican governors who are, by and large, socially conservative. Now, Governor Sandoval is much more moderate than our past couple of governors. But what these people would do is, these governors, is they appoint political cronies or people who are like-minded to them to these state agencies, who are the ones who are actually making the policy. The legislature just kind of drafts and regulates the broad brushstrokes, and then they leave it to an individual agency to come up with the fine details. And so if you have socially conservative people who are in charge of this and people who are not sympathetic to the needs of patients, then they're going to do everything they can to slam on the brakes of any sort of social change. So it's not even a Democratic Republican issue. It's more of a conservative versus compassionate issue.
Fair enough.
So and we do have people who are in the industry who are speaking out against this. David Goldwater, who's an owner at Fine Cannabis, said in the Las Vegas Sun that not only is it important for our business, but for the patients who need this medicine while they're visiting here. And he argued that over 90% of an estimated 1.5 to 2 million California medical marijuana users choose a physician's recommendation over a state-issued medical marijuana card to avoid additional costs and registering with the state. And that second part, that registering with the state, is where I hear from a lot of patients why they don't get on a state program, because they have a scarlet letter on their forehead anytime they register with the state.
Well, and it's
true. In Nevada, for the first 9 years of the program, they were sharing that patient data with the federal government.
I have reason to believe that they're still sharing that information with a lot of entities. Otherwise, how would they have the information to decline potential firearms purchasers from that with no potential criminal I have all kinds of questions about how this information is coming into the various entities' hands in the first place, whether it be through back channels or official emails or whatever. But it's like you said, the people speak, and we want these things to be implemented, but they always seem to find inroads around it to try to discourage people from doing this. It seems, and I don't want to say the infamous they, but it kind of is the infamous they.
But we have a case where now over 80% of the United States citizenry supports the use of medical cannabis and the legalization and the regulation of it, and yet less than 50% of politicians, elected politicians, still do.
Well, for sure.
That's
because we don't really have a direct democracy. It's a representative government, supposedly, and these people don't speak to the will of their constituents a lot of times. They speak to their own supposed inner moral compass that guides them to these decisions,
or quite often they speak to the big money that has helped them get elected, and that's their true constituency.
Right.
So,
but we do have some good people out here on our side on this in legislature. We
absolutely,
got, Patricia Farley, who is right now she's planning to present an opinion from the Legislative Council Bureau in favor of keeping the notes as part of the reciprocity measure. Sorry, I always get that word wrong. As a counter argument against Laxett's recommendation. So, and Patricia Farley has been one of the big people that helped get this law passed, along with Tick Seeger-Bloom, and she sits on the Legislative Council Bureau for this with Tick Seeger-Bloom. So we have some people giving a little bit of pushback on our end, and I'm sure the dispensary owners are going to too, because this came as a surprise to all the dispensary owners. They had no idea that the Health and Human Services reached out to the Attorney General on this matter. So.
Yet at the same time, Senator Farley, who was obviously a proponent of these changes in the last legislative session, she said that the recent crackdown was taken to ensure the legitimacy of Nevada's medical marijuana industry. And I don't know how she gets to that statement. I don't understand how patients coming in from another state with their recommendations, but without a state card, could possibly be delegitimizing.
I just don't think they like these dispensary owners and tour operators being clever and looking for the loopholes in the law. They don't really appreciate that, and I think they took it personally and decided to do what they could to shut it down, because that wasn't directly in the bill. They probably weren't licensed directly as the tour guys probably are not incorporated as a medical marijuana entity. They're just like a referral service, but they're bringing in all these out-of-state patients, which it doesn't make any sense to me why they would hate it, because the state is getting paid by these out-of-state patients with the eventual revenue. So, I don't really understand where the bad in this eventually is, because all these people have been vetted by physicians in California. So it just boggles my mind how these people make these leaps, and how they say, like you said, the delegitimization by doing this. I don't understand, like you said, how
I'd wonder if there were other businesses here in Nevada who are quietly supporting this crackdown, because when people come to Vegas or come to Nevada as tourists, and let's take Vegas for example, the LVCVA, which is the Convention and Visitors Authority, says that the typical visitor is going to spend X amount of dollars in each visit, and they break it down to how much they're spending for shows, how much they're spending for lodging, how much they're spending for dinner and various other attractions. And if that is the case, that they say the typical tourist is going to spend, I don't know, I'm just going to grab a number, $500,
Okay.
then it's a zero-sum game. And so if they're taking $100 of that out of their general budget to go buy medical cannabis because it's available here in the state, then somebody else might feel like they're going to lose.
Right. Okay.
So I'm not saying that that's absolutely what's happening, but I can understand that
not enough room in this town for the two of us.
that does seem to happen a fair amount.
Well,
so
I don't see the only industry I could see really maybe being hurt by it would be the alcohol industry, because people are still going to stay in their rooms, people are still going to gamble, people are still going to go to the shows, they're still going to eat. So I mean, all the normal Las Vegas stuff, if you're a medical patient or not, you're still going to go. It's not like I'm just coming here to use medical marijuana and then going home. They're coming to Vegas to go on a trip.
They're trying to have fun.
So it really shouldn't impact any of the other businesses.
I think it would have actually less impact on the alcohol industry than on the gaming industry, because you can go into a casino with a roll of nickels and drink yourself blind if you want. But if there's going to be discretionary spending that gets hit, it's going to most likely be that spare slot machine or craps table money that people might bring in. And those casino corporations are the big power players in the state.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure how much how much cannabis patients.
That's the point.
I don't
if
know.
You're on alcohol, you're invincible and you'll gamble your house away. But if you're highly medicated, you'll just look at the slot machines and say, "Ooh, look at the pretty lights."
I was going to say, I've been to these, various cups in California, and everyone, being from Las Vegas, it's an automatic geographical advantage to everyone I come into contact with. It's an instant icebreaker. Everyone wants to talk about Vegas, has questions, various, conversation starter. It's wonderful. People in California, these cannabis consumers and, users and business owners, I talk to them, and very rarely do they go, man, I can't wait to get to Vegas, hit the craps table or anything like that. Like, it just doesn't come up often in conversation about gambling, and maybe the gaming entities have become aware of that or not. I'm not exactly sure whether they've even done demographic studies about that or whether they have or haven't.
Oh, yeah. I've seen studies of that over the past 20 years, which show a steady decline of the percentage of the discretionary budget that people are bringing here going to gambling. So their revenues have been going down, and which is why so many places have been looking for non-gaming
revenue. Yeah, that's right. Well, it's a resort town now. It's not a gaming house anymore. They have everything, and the game. I don't want to say the gaming's the side gig, because it'll always be the primary. But back in the day, they didn't have the amount of infrastructure invested into some of these properties that they do now. It's unbelievable. I think that started basically with the Mirage was the first real super resort.
Yeah. And now each one has to outdo the other, so you've got billion-dollar investments there. So I think we'll take a quick break here right now, and we'll be right back.
Yeah, everyone.
Nevada Pure is a premier, vertically integrated medical marijuana enterprise which offers top-quality medical marijuana, great customer service, and a safe, private environment. We carry a wide selection of medical cannabis strains. Our knowledgeable staff will assist you in finding the correct strain for your condition. Our trained professional staff can educate you on various strains for your condition, methods of consumption, responsible cannabis use, and the wellness benefits of cannabis. We aim to help patients achieve a better quality of life. Medical marijuana is a medicine, not an intoxicant. It's about a patient's well-being at Nevada Pure. From the moment you make an appointment with us, your care, health, and well-being is our priority. Nevada Pure is located at 4360 Boulder Highway, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out their entire menu at www.nevadapure.com.
Attention medical marijuana patients. Do you know what your cannabis actually contains? Are there heavy metals, pesticides, or even mold? And what strength is it really? And is it really what you need? Well, the answers to these questions are simple. DigiPath Labs. DigiPath Labs is a Nevada state-approved medical marijuana testing facility whose scientists carefully test products for safety and potency, all within the state's rigorous mandate. You can buy with confidence and trust knowing DigiPath Labs has tested your medicine. If you're a licensed grower, dispenser, extractor, or edibles manufacturer in Nevada and want unparalleled customer service and consumer confidence, go to digipathlabs.com and find out what we can do for you. And as a patient, only go to dispensaries that carry the DigiPath Labs seal of approval. That's digipathlabs.com, DIGIPATH labs.com. Or call us at 702-209-2429. That's 702-209-2429.
Welcome back to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. So we're just talking about the Attorney General in Nevada here. And Perry, you got a news story up here, don't you?
Well,
Spending money.
Yeah, we were talking
money.
about discretionary spending here in Nevada and how it might affect certain businesses. So this is kind of a strange story written by Chris Roberts from Cannabis Now, and they're talking exactly about that. What's left over? What kind of discretionary spending do you have after spending rent money on, rent, groceries, student loans, etc.? And the surprising answer is, supposedly, the average cannabis consumer spends about $647 on cannabis flowers per year, according to a study. That seems a little low. A very, very low. Maybe they're taking this on a very broad apparently they took this over all kinds of demographics. They collected all this data from all these dispensaries and had the average price of sale and average age. And the average age of the consumer is 37 years old, and most buys are made by men. It's really millennials who are keeping the industry afloat right now. Half of recreational cannabis consumers are between 21 and 34, the survey found, with the flower power generation the least likely to stop at the local dispensary. Less than 10% of consumers were over 60 years old. Impressive. What are people buying exactly? It's bud, of course. And then they break it down. Oh, you spend this much per visit and this, that, and the other. But the long and the short of it is, people are spending supposedly about $650 of their discretionary income per year on grass.
That doesn't sound like much. I agree with you. At prices out there at $400 an ounce.
I've spent that much in a month before.
There you go. But I would say that there were a number of years where I didn't spend a cent on cannabis because I was in the program and I was growing my own.
Yeah.
And so, that gets factored in there. But a lot of studies have shown over the years that cannabis use tends to be highest among young adults, and that the use tapers off as people get older. Although the highest demographic in the state program is the 55 to 64.
Right.
So,
but they also mentioned recreational in there.
Yes.
I mean, as a medical patient, yes, that's very low. I mean, go through that in a month without even thinking about it. But as a recreational user, you figure the usual recreational user is going to be kind of a weekend smoker. They don't smoke during the week because they're working, and they have the weekends off, and they go out and they, maybe smoke 1 or 2 joints with their friends. And so if you're doing it that way, think of an eighth would last you a couple of weeks.
Well, I guess when you put it that way, it doesn't seem so ridiculous. But most of the people I come into contact with that are consumers are not so casual, let's say.
Yeah, I could have a friend come over who could go through that in an afternoon. Look what you've got. I'll start rolling.
And when you start, of course, when you start using the concentrates and that, it adds up really fast.
It gets expensive real quick.
You can go through a gram of wax, by yourself in an evening if you wanted to.
Absolutely, easily.
I don't know about that. But through the years that I was working directly with patients, what I found was that I would say they averaged about an ounce a month in their use. Although the reason that they did that was financial, because it was just too damn expensive, and that talking to people who were growing their own, who had access or who had the money, it was more like an ounce a week. And so a lot of people, due to the market forces, were actually under-medicating for their conditions. And so you can have people say, oh, well, that doesn't really work for you, because look, you still have pain and this and that. Sure,
and some people with too much disposable income have potential to over-medicate.
And on that note, when you said $400 ounces, we're we're way below that here in Nevada now.
Well, now, okay, I'm speaking
one of
ancient
our
history.
one of our sponsors of our show, Essence, Essence Vegas. They have 3 locations in town. I just received an email from them yesterday. They have 7 strains, all over 20% THC, for $200 an ounce right now.
Right now, but
Yeah.
but I'll tell you what, if this initiative passes, question 2 passes in November, as we think it will, you're going to see $25 an eighth medical turn into $75 an eighth recreational overnight. It'll be amazing.
Well, if it passes in November, it's about a year till it goes into effect, and hopefully by then we'll have more of the big grows that'll be open and more of the supply. So it shouldn't affect us as much. It's not going to go into effect in November or right in January.
Of course.
So
Well, not the retail, not the selling of, but I think that the actual possession, the criminality
Yeah.
of the possession will go away very quickly. I think by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So,
but they still won't be able to just walk in and buy it at our dispensaries yet. So that cushion, we really need that cushion in there, because we need more of the grows to come on, because as we all know, everything is supply and demand when it comes to stuff like this. And if it were to go into effect in November and we have the same amount of grows now, yes, I mean, our medication would probably triple. But the fact is, we got a lot of these grows that are starting to come online now. A lot of them are, 60, 70, 80% done. So hopefully, by the time that the law goes into effect, we have a lot more of these big grows in operation, which in turn will give us a greater supply, and it shouldn't affect us as much.
But I'd also say, though, if you're talking about prices being dependent on supply and demand, which obviously they are, the fact that you're saying that that these dispensaries are now offering multiple strains for in the $200 to $250 range indicates to me that there's a lot of supply out there.
Of course.
not
Right
as
now.
much demand. And this whole thing that we were talking about in the last segment about the Attorney General cutting out a big chunk of patients is only going to reduce demand and increase supply.
Oh yeah,
further driving
the
down
glut.
prices.
Yeah, the glut will grow drastically. So, it's hard for these massive grow facilities who built these big operations. It's hard for them to turn the lights off at half their facility because, it's
They
just
still
killing
got
their
the same rent. They still got general overhead. They're
it's just
saving on
killing
that.
their overhead. It's just absolutely killing them. And if you can't justify making that much product, you got big problems. I mean, I heard rumors when this first got started that some of these first couple teams that were outgrowing, they were able to charge quite a hefty premium on some of their product originally. And I think those days are over.
There's still two grows out there that are charging over $3,000 a pound. to the
Wow,
wholesale
and getting
price.
it.
And getting it, yeah.
That's
So,
impressive.
I mean, we do have the $200 ounces available as patients, and yes, they can go all the way up to $350 for your higher end top shelf stuff. But I mean, for the fact to walk into a place and have a selection of 7 strains, all tested, all safe, all of them over 20%. For $200, I mean,
We've come a long way.
There's no way you could find that on the street. No way.
Well, I think what's happening here in Nevada, though, is that the collapse of that wholesale price or the diminishment of that wholesale price is happening a lot faster than elsewhere. When I was in Colorado in 09 and 10, the average wholesale price was about $4,000 a pound to dispensaries.
Jesus.
And over the course of the next 2.5 years, up till the legalization vote, that price dropped to the point of $2,500 or so. We're seeing the same thing happen in Nevada, where at first you were getting these growers with such limited supply out there being able to get $4,000 a pound, but within a year that price has now collapsed to $2,700 or so, from what I'm hearing.
I've heard it as low as $1,800.
Yeah.
Or something, but that's you kind of, that falls along things. You get what you pay for too. So
Yes,
I mean,
of course,
I've
of
seen
course.
the $1,800 a pound stuff, and I turned it into cooking oil.
Well, you're always going to have, I think when legalization hits, and even in the medical market, you're always going to have your, $50 an ounce Mexican swag night train type of pot, your $150 an ounce Budweiser pot, and you'll still have your $400 plus an ounce boutique winery pot. And you know, and what you're saying is that these people are out there getting greater than $3,000 a pound right now on the wholesale level, and that shows that they're trying to be boutique. They're trying to keep those prices up. And you know, the flip side of that though is they all took such big spaces because they're counting on rec that it's turning around and biting them in the butt right now.
If this thing with the Attorney General sticks and recreational doesn't pass,
we're in a world of hurt as
a
patients
lot
at
of
that point.
people are going to go out of business. They
Oh,
won't be able to
absolutely.
make it. I mean, I don't even want to. I don't even want to think about it right now.
Well, not only a lot of people going out of business, a lot of jobs would be lost.
Yes.
Oh,
a
sure,
lot.
sure, and all that. You know, all those high hopes for the K-12 revenue and all that kind of crap. All that
Yep.
out the joint. Register to vote. Don't forget.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
I don't think we'll go back to where we were, where we don't have any access, but our access will
No, there's a
definitely
couple
drop.
of shops who have stayed small and didn't get too ridiculous, but it's like you said, you know,
smart.
everyone's got big dreams, you know, big ambitions. Go big or go home. You know, take that risk for that big reward, and you know all those rah things that you tell each other in the board meetings when you're putting these blueprints together.
Yep. Yeah, blue skies up ahead. But you know, a good thing about this, though, I mean, we're hoping this this initiative will pass in Nevada this year, and it's on the ballot in at least 7 other states, medical or rec. It's really being normalized at this point, and one of the biggest normalizations I can possibly think of is the Oregon State Fair, because state fairs in this country in general are heartland, conservative America, farmers,
Sure.
you know, breeders, and this stuff. And now in Oregon, they're coming up with cannabis plants on display and going to be awarded at the
So
fair.
I heard about this. They're going to be displayed. Will the Oregon State Fair issue first place prettiest bud prize? Is that what is this more of a display, or is it like a rose
Yeah,
competition?
it is a competition. They're going to be doing, well, they're not going to be sampling. It's going to be based off just the visual of the cannabis.
Okay.
And probably the smell. But they're doing it for each style. They're going to have a blue, purple, or yellow ribbon to win. So
And they had people actually test out the strains before the fair. They're not smoking
That's
it
so
up
funny.
on site, but they've made this decision before. But it just strikes me that you've got this real heartland America type of event that is now for the first time opening up to the cannabis consumer and the cannabis industry.
Who, how are those things usually done at state fairs? Is it like a panel of judges who does it, or is it like public vote, or?
Panel of judges.
Okay, cool. Very, very, very interesting. I would love to see how this plays out over the next few years. Will this spread to Washington? Because I remember a few years ago they were talking about they used to have farmers markets in some of these places where
California.
the growers would come and there'd be this big thing. You'd come around and shop around. Could this be the beginning of the reintroduction of some of that normalization into a public forum like that?
I think the normalization is happening because you've now got 25 states that have medical cannabis laws, and if you include the ones that have CBD laws, you're up around 35, 36. Right. So really, the country is normalizing this. The war on cannabis is going to end, and it's just a matter of time.
Like a step forward, a step back at the same time, because I see this all the time. Like I said, we got it in the state fair, but they took away the farmers markets. You can allowed to buy recreational pot, but they took away a lot of hash bars and things like that. I was talking to a guy at the Champ Show that had a dab rig box that had 6 different displays on it for a hash bar, where you could put 6 different leads in it for a whole thing. And he's like, well, now that hash bars are gone, we don't really have a direct market for these, but we have this inventory, so we're not going to throw them away.
And a hash bar not necessarily meaning only hash is sold there, but it's a
place to consume.
Retail on-site consumption place.
Yeah, just somewhere to consume on site, exactly. Similar to a bar that serves packaged liquor also.
Yes.
Well, it's a bar that instead of going and drinking, you're consuming your cannabis.
You're
Well,
being
people-
safer and smarter.
Well, people think that's such an outrageous thing. They say, well, you can't consume on site, but it's like I have been to places like the Office Bar over on Paradise Road that will sell you a 6-pack of beer and also serve you a beer out of the tap if you so choose. They have both licenses were grandfathered in originally.
Right.
It's just the way that was written back in the day. The world doesn't collapse because a couple dozen places chose remove their original locations and keep those grandfather licenses. It's just the way business is done.
And I think that's what we're seeing, is that the vast majority of American people are seeing that with legalization in Colorado and Washington and so forth, that the sky is not falling. These states that have passed rec are not falling apart. And in fact, they're seeing much increased revenue.
No, my aunt is kind of a strange bird. She's a very educated lady, overly educated, a couple PhDs and all that kind of stuff. Lives in downtown Denver, like right in the middle of a very, I would call a not very nice part of Denver. There's a lot of homeless activity out there, but she loves the busy scene. And I asked her, I said, beyond, she doesn't smoke pot, she doesn't drink, she's real square. I said, what has this really done for Denver? And she said, well, there's a lot more homeless people here now, but they're all very nice and things like that. And she's never been accosted by any of them or anything like that. They're not violent, supposedly. And she said that it's becoming harder and harder to find a place to rent in Denver because of the amount of people that are flooding to that area because of the recreational cannabis. And she's, they're throwing up apartments as fast as they can build them. And the applications to go to school, because she's in college for another PhD, it's getting harder and harder to get into the Colorado schools because so many kids want to apply to go to those schools because of this now. Yeah. And I would assume it's having a similar effect in Oregon and Washington, and people always like to point to the bad potential social ramifications, but really it's like, the jobs and the money and all that. There's so many positives to outweigh the potential negatives, and all those taxes that come in could, in theory, be used to potentially address some of these new homeless issues that are coming up if it becomes a problem. So, it's I didn't expect that from such a conservative person, well, an honest opinion.
It's interesting that you're saying that, there are a lot of homeless people, but they're all very nice. Former Representative Barney Frank just recently did an interview in Rolling Stone magazine, and he slammed the drug war and called for the legalization of all drugs. And when asked what the next when asked when the next frontier of progressive politics is, Frank said that the lefties should fight to lower the military budget, create a better economy safety net, and end the stupid drug war. He said, we should outlaw a drug if it is likely to make you mistreat others. People don't hit other people in the head because they're on heroin. They hit other people in the head because they need money to buy heroin. And so it's very much the same here. When people are coming to Colorado, is the homeless factor a problem? Well, I guess it is. But for these people, they're willing to be homeless and be out there on the street in an environment where they can be less likely to be charged with felonies,
where they're more tolerated.
Their life, ruined.
And the homeless problem doesn't necessarily mean that all these people are moving there and just not. All the homeless are people that just moved there because of illegal. It very well could be a circumstance of the fact that people are moving there now to go to school and because it is legal, and the housing market is now, costs have risen.
Like in San
So
Francisco,
the people that are on the lower end of the income, they fall out of the housing market because they can't afford to live.
Really, a lot of people may have become homeless.
Yeah, I mean that only makes sense. That if your housing costs go up, your homeless numbers go up too, because the people that are on the bottom edge of that housing market and barely making enough to make rent, your rents go up. What happens to them?
Well, it's also a situation where, and there are no hard, fast studies on this, but you could also have people who are economically, in a tailspin and who become homeless, who have moved to Colorado because they're looking at the increased economic activity, and they're looking at the potential of maybe getting a job in this industry, maybe learning something about it. So, your aunt's anecdotal story notwithstanding, we don't really know what the root cause of this homeless problem is.
Right. Of course, it's just how people perceive it. They say, okay, marijuana has become legal. These are the things that I have noticed as a resident of such city. Right. The homeless population has increased, but all these other things have also happened. So, you take the good with the bad, I suppose, and you just try to work through those problems as they come up. And there is no perfect bill, there's no perfect solution, and there are unintended consequences that happen when we seek upon these social experiments.
Yep. And speaking of taking the good with the bad, we have to pay the bills here. So we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
From the soothing sounds of a water wall to the warmth, wood interior, and beautiful artwork, as soon as you enter Sahara Wellness, you are welcomed into a relaxing space where we strive to provide our patients with a healthy balance of mind, body, and spirit. That balance is achieved through a compassionate and knowledgeable staff who possesses both a passion for the medical cannabis industry as well as unrivaled dedication to assisting those in need of a natural method of pain relief. Our bud tenders are available to assist patients in selecting cannabis-based medicine that best suits their needs from our selection of flower, waxes, CBD lotions, and delicious edibles. Sahara Wellness is located at 420 East Sahara Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out our entire menu at www.420sahara.com.
Hi, I'm Armin Yamanijan, CEO of Essence Dispensaries, and I'd like to let you know a little bit about our company. As a completely complimentary service, our on-site nurse is here to meet with any patient or non-patient to discuss dosing and best practices. We have 3 convenient locations. We have one location on Tropicana between Decatur and Jones, which is our west side location. Our Henderson location is on the corner of Sunset and Green Valley Parkway, and we're proud to announce that we have the first and only dispensary on the Las Vegas Strip, on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Sahara. Our prices are the lowest prices in town and the highest quality medicine. Please come and see us at one of our 3 convenient locations or visit us at essencevegas.com. You can also call us at 702-978-7575. Once again, the number is 702-978-7575.
Welcome back to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. So, Perry, you got another story?
Yeah, we got another story.
How much does your joint weigh?
Well, that varies upon where you live and how you roll and, all that kind of stuff.
And what I'm rolling it for.
There finally might be some clarity. Okay, this study arrived at an estimate based on almost 11,000 marijuana transactions, and
these were transactions that all led to arrests, so they were quantifiable.
Right, but according to 2 researchers at the University of Pennsylvania, the answer is 0.32 grams, which is a lot lower than I would estimate.
Burn a third of it just lighting it.
Right.
Sounds like a pin joint to me.
Well, a lot of estimates were as high as a gram or maybe even over, but the number typically falls within the range of many estimates that have come before it, which is typically between 0.3 and 0.75 grams. Researchers have long tried to get an average. An informal online survey of High Times readers in 2015 estimated that the joints that they smoked contained between half a gram and a gram, which sounds about right, suggesting that somewhere around 0.75 grams may be the norm. The government, meanwhile, suggested that the joints typically contain 0.43 grams, according to the internal law enforcement studies, of course. Pre-rolled joints in recreational dispensaries and places where cannabis is legal are usually a gram.
They're out here, they're 0.6 or 1 gram.
Yeah, it depends on which shop you get them from, but yeah.
But what I want to know is why law enforcement's doing studies into how much a joint weighs.
Well, because by doing that, they are able to determine how much is being consumed.
That's right, consumption rates.
How much money is passing hands, various things like that. And so, they're most interested in the money, of course.
Well, in a 2007 study, a few researchers got some pot smokers to roll out fake joints using dried oregano to try to simulate typical content. That yielded an estimate of 0.66 grams, but with the standard deviation of a whopping 0.45 grams, and the relative density of oregano to marijuana is unknown with the moisture content and all that. So there are a lot of variables that at least they were willing to take into consideration and put that right in black and white. It didn't just say, oh, well, we correlated this directly. They had all those controls laid out. So that was nice, at least. And, they published their studies in the Journal for Drug and Alcohol Dependence, just FYI.
I bought an eighth of oregano once here in Vegas many years ago.
I bought some fake hash.
Very, very disappointing.
Yeah, I bought some fake hash in Vancouver once. I was in Canada at night, and this guy spotted a hat I was wearing or something and tried to pass me something, and it ended up being just nonsense. But
soap.
Yeah, it was crap. But it happens once in a while. We it's a game we play.
and unfortunately, it's not just a game, because so many people have had their lives ruined by convictions in the drug war. And certainly,
No doubt.
as Jack Harris said, the worst effect of cannabis is what happens when you get caught with it.
Yeah.
And President Richard Nixon declared the war on drugs in 1973 after the CSA, the Controlled Substances Act, passed Congress in 1971.
How much longer after that did he name Elvis a drug enforcement officer, as he was high as a kite in the meeting?
As he was high as a kite.
Yeah, prescription for cocaine.
But the point of that is that in 1973, when Nixon announced this drug war, law enforcement had to come up with a method of determining what was an illicit drug and what wasn't. And so they came up with a drug test back then with a chemical called cobalt thiocyanate. And this test has not changed since 1973. Now, the rest of the world has changed mightily in that time. But what's happening now is, just like a prescription drug that gets taken off prescription, you get generics, the price goes way down. This thiosulfate test has been around for so long that it's really cheap, and it only costs law enforcement agencies about $2 to make this to perform this drug test. And the problem is that they're highly inaccurate, and you've got tens of thousands.
But they carry weight in court.
Oh, absolutely, and they shouldn't, but they do, and in part because over 90% of drug cases these days are plea bargained down. They don't even go to trial. They go into the courtroom just for a preliminary hearing and then for a sentencing, essentially. And so with such a huge percentage going and being educated in this manner, if you have faulty drug tests, you're convicting a large number of people who may or may not be guilty of the crime.
Unbelievable.
I saw that they have all sorts of things here that test positive and that aren't. And I'm reading this here, a 2011 report from RTI International in the New York Times Magazine. Found that the prosecutors in 9 of 10 jurisdictions it surveyed nationwide accepted guilty pleas based solely on the results of the field tests. And the one that I saw in there that does this is Las Vegas. And that's a real disappointment that it happens. And between 2010 and 2015, re-examination of tests after the field test was done, and this is done in a lab by authorities in Las Vegas, found a false positive rate of 33%.
Unbelievable.
It is. So if you're at a roadside stop and the police, break this little vial open and they put, your substance in it, and they say, you've got this controlled substance, they're going to arrest you. They're going to process you through the system. You're going to have to make bail, which is not cheap, and you're going to have your life generally disrupted. What good does it do you after the fact when a lab says, no, you really shouldn't convict this guy because this isn't the illegal substance?
Well, you've already been put through the ringer. At that point, you'd have to go file a lawsuit against the police department and go through that whole process and start it all over again.
And how many people do that? Very few.
Well, it's hard to find the resources. Yeah, it's hard to find the resources, and the retribution is potentially vicious.
Yep.
So, I mean, they say justice is blind, and it's supposed to be, this, I don't want to say pure entity, because we all know it's not. But when I was young, I remember hearing something that said that better 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man wrongfully go to prison.
Right.
And that is so not the case, because it's in the attitude of the people who prosecute the crimes. And what I mean by that is they're looking, I feel like a lot of people who do this for a living are looking for the next step up in their career. And the way that they do that is by making talking points, and talking points are made with numbers. Numbers tell stories. Example, I heard a prosecutor once say, I've issued X number of felony hours or felony years of convictions in my career. And I said, well, how the hell why are you keeping track of that?
Right.
Why is that something that you should be giving to the world as a stat to be proud of?
Because
are you
that's
looking for are you looking for years? We're looking for new and creative ways to take people's freedom away now? I thought we were looking for people who were making bad on our society. who are, you're supposed to separate people who are supposed to be away from the rest of us in a cage because they don't belong with us and they can't interact. Not looking for new and creative ways to do said things.
And the American public is growing increasingly intolerant of the spending, given that we're spending more now on building prisons than we are on building schools.
33% wrong.
That's pretty bad.
Like how?
Well, there was just a story I heard last week of a guy who was convicted, and it turned out to be a false test, and it was a false test, a positive for methamphetamine, and it was from a Krispy Kreme donut.
Oh yeah, the donut glaze that they found on looked like flakes of meth. Yeah, unbelievable.
And this poor guy got run through the ringer and everything, and because he had a Krispy Kreme donut, which by the way is legal in all of our states.
Well, and everyone made obvious joke. Cop can't tell a glazed donut. How could you not do that? And I bet the cop got pissed when the guy said it. Oh, it's donut glaze. They said, "Oh, you motherfucker, you're making fun." Probably thought he was poking at him, making fun of him. Oh, I'm a cop with the donut, and that probably grinded him down a little bit, which caused the turn into a hard contact.
Yeah. So I got another story here. That a new poll came out of YouGov.com that says 2/3 of Americans say enforcing marijuana laws costs more than it's worth. So that's right along those same lines. I mean, 65% of Americans age 18 and older believe that government efforts to enforce marijuana laws cost more than they're worth. And 55% of respondents say that it should be legal to consume the herb.
And that number keeps going up and up. Last year it was 54%. Now it's 55. The American people are sensible on this issue, and they know that because more than half of Americans have tried cannabis at some time in their life, and so they know that it's not this reefer madness, debilitating drug.
That's a great stat, but I need that language clarified a little bit. I need that to say that percentage of prospective voters polled say this, not just, you know what I mean? So once again, register to vote.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to start a new segment this week called The Point, and where the various hosts or guests will be able to weigh in on their feelings on a particular topic. And we're going to start this inaugural one with Perry, because he just had a birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, I've been asked to do a certain segment on a specific topic that I feel is kind of important to a lot of patients. A large demographic of cannabis consumers cannot smoke marijuana due to health reasons or reasons, where they have children that they don't want to smoke around or whatever the case may be. They choose to use edibles. Edibles have become wildly popular in the past few years, and with the advent or the introduction of medical dispensaries here, we have a plethora of vendors now offering these wonderful products for us to sample. Unfortunately, here in Nevada, the prices are fairly outrageous. We have talked at length about how the price of the flowers have just plummeted here in the valley significantly, and it's great for the patients. But for those people who are susceptible to smoke inhalation, the options aren't so cheery. I went to a dispensary the other day and saw a package of chocolate chip cookies from a reputable vendor, just fantastic quality, by the way, delicious. But for 100 milligrams of THC, it was $30 plus tax, which came out to about $34. And I went online, and I used to work or volunteer at a shop in Hollywood called Hollyweed. And I went to their website and saw that they had a Kurova Black Bar 1,000 milligram edible for $45. So for me to get the same THC amount, it would cost $340 for that same edible. So I figured out the math. I figured it would take me my Jeep gets 20 miles to the gallon on the highway. At $3 a gallon, it would take me $84 in gas to get from here to Venice and back from Hollyweed. Now, in addition to that, it would cost me about $40 to get my California recommendation, $110 to get a room for the night, and about $50 to $60 to get breakfast and lunch. I could take a vacation to the beach, get my recommendation, go get my 1,000 milligrams of cannabis, and come back and be legal in 2 states for the same price that it would cost me to get the same medicine from the legal dispensaries here in Nevada.
And part of that problem is because the 100 milligrams that you mentioned was a city of Las Vegas requirement, that any edible could not be more than 100 milligrams in the product. But I know that we're working on that. We had Councilman Steve Ross on a few weeks back, and the city is trying to comport with the county.
Oh, absolutely. I know we'll get past this issue eventually, but for now, the people who need it, their options are limited. So I implore anyone who is watching this to address your dispensaries. Let them know what you're looking for. They respond to your needs as patients. So if you've observed the same difficulties with acquiring affordable edibles that I have, let's see what we can do together. And that's all I have to say about that for now.
And a big part of that also is, as an edible, it's been tested twice, because the flower was tested, then it was processed into an edible, and now the edible has to be tested. One way we can get around this is to not necessarily even grow your own medicine. You can buy the $200 ounce at the dispensary, make it into your own butter. With an ounce, you could make basically 8 sticks of butter and multiple dozens of cookies out of that.
Yeah, no doubt.
For that $200 plus your cooking supply, so for $250.
But isn't that technically illegal? You're not supposed to be doing that anymore?
I thought that was just with the blasting with the solvents. I didn't know it was
that's
the
what
butter.
the law was intended for, and technically the law, I mean, they could do it. They haven't done it. If they do it, we're going to get behind whoever they do it to 100%. Because, I mean, I understand we don't want blasting. It's unsafe. But that crock pot with butter or coconut oil and cannabis in it sitting on my counter and then strained out is absolutely safe. If I can put chicken and rice and all that and carrots and all that stuff in my crock pot and leave it in my house for 8 hours while I'm at work and come home, it's absolutely the same thing as putting butter and cannabis in there. So it's perfectly safe. So
you heard it here. There are options, folks.
Yep, there are options. So that we're kind of running low on time, so we got a couple of announcements. We have First Friday coming up this Friday, so everyone come on out, look for us over there behind the Arts Factory. We'll
Always
be back
a great
there.
time.
Lots of great products from you, because we just had Champ. So if you're looking for some gifts for the significant stoner in your life, come on by. We're going to have it out there for you. Also, next Tuesday up in Reno, we're having the first patient meeting by our new chapter up there, in the Weekend chapter up there, Weekend 775. The information's on our website, so if you're interested in up there in Northern Nevada, go to our website, check it out, and get you the address for that. August 28th, our 8-year anniversary party. So we're come on out and PPP with us at Weekend.
4525 North TP Lane.
Yep, exactly.
From 3 to 10 p.m. It's a $20 entry, and all proceeds, of course, as always, go to help our patient program.
Yep. And then the very next day at the Grant Sawyer building, they're having a public
Which is
hearing.
555 East Washington.
Yep. They're having a public hearing on the proposed regulation changes to the program. So this one's an important one. If you can make it out to this one, come on out. Let them know your opinions on this. Because contrary to what people believe, they really do listen to what we have to say. Don't come down with your patient stories. Come down with what you feel needs to be changed. I mean, they understand that people are sick.
Will there be an agenda available online for people to view so they can get their thoughts together first, or will it just kind of be they're just going with it? Or
I'm sure they will post an agenda. They generally do. Usually, two anywhere between a week to 2 days before is when the agendas will come out on them.
Where can we find that?
And we'll find that out, and we'll let people know in next week's show, because we're just about out of time. So I would like to thank you for listening into this episode of the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. This is our 121st episode.
120th, I think.
120th.
120th.
That's still pretty significant.
Well done.
No, 121 exactly. Yep.
All right. So for Kurt Dukach, Perry Heitchu, and myself, thanks for listening.